This is my 1 week experience with Linux. But first, why did I want to use Linux? Well, yeah. This whole AI thing honestly scares me enough to want to switch to Linux. I know Microsoft will probably have security measures towards this, but I don't want this to be on my system. I know I could just never update, but I'd rather get more prepared in case I'm ever forced to update to it, assuming it gets released. The Linux distro that I chose was Mint. Now, installing Linux Mint was a tad bit harder than I expected. I thought I could just download the ISO and put it on the USB drive. However, I have to use a separate app that they mention on their website for the setup. I tried it without the app, and it didn't work. The app was pretty straightforward with what you have to do. For some reason, my USB drive was nearly at its max storage after I did this whole Linux media install on the USB drive. Thankfully, I'm able to fix this with a third-party app. After setting up my USB drive, I boot into BIOS and it works. Now, I was in Linux on the USB, and now I just have to install it on my drive. Installing it on my drive was easier than I expected. I created an unallocated virtual drive because I thought Linux wouldn't be able to create one by itself. However, I was wrong. I was able to give Linux more than 500 gigabytes on my 2 terabyte drive. Now, while the drive was setting up, I make the mistake of turning off my monitor screen. Why does this matter? Well, I couldn't turn the screen back on. And now I have no clue if I shut off my computer if it would interrupt the setup process of Linux. But I end up first shutting off my computer, and thankfully nothing got corrupted. And when I tried installing Linux again, it seems like it already got completed. Well, it at least made the drive partition already, but I need to download the software onto the drive partition. Thankfully, I was able to do so without any further issues. Now, my initial impressions of using Linux was that it felt more secure and it gave off old Windows vibes. For example, when you boot into Linux, it asks for your password and the numpad is disabled, even if you left it on in your previous session. I believe it's doing this to try to be more secure, which it's not really that big of a deal. You just have to press the numlock button. Or you can just use the other number area on the keyboard. I also really like this feature it has where even though I choose for it to boot on the Linux partition, it gives me a choice to launch into Windows without having to open the BIOS menu. It only gives me like 10 seconds to move using the arrow keys before it auto boots into Linux. Also, even though the system does give off old Windows vibes, I managed to get Linux to look like this. So yeah, pretty cool. Also, just for fun, I ran a network speed test and surprisingly, Linux was actually slower in the network speed test and Windows was like 300 megabits per second faster than Linux. Yikes. And this can really be caused by a lot of things. So it's just kind of like tricky trying to get it to run as fast as Windows. Now you might be wondering, how hard is it to download apps? Well, this is my experience. If the app you want is in the Software Manager app, aka the App Store on Linux, it's pretty straightforward. If it's not in the App Store, well, you might want to take the day off to try and download the app. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but if the app isn't on the App Store, you probably have a harder time installing it because you have to do coding. And the difficulty can range from really easy to really hard. It really varies. Now, what about the gaming experience? Well, the gaming experience for incompatible apps. Wait, how did you run apps that are incompatible with Linux, you may be asking? Well, there's a setting on Steam that lets you run games if your system doesn't fall under the game's compatibility list. Even though my computer specs were high enough to run the game that I wanted to test, Black Ops 2, that wasn't the issue. The issue was the OS I was using. Even though it had compatibility issues with Linux, I still tried playing the game anyways. Here's how it went. The game does its real thing while the text doesn't load. Now, I downloaded some Windows drivers using an app called Wine Tester. I know this kind of defeats the purpose of using Linux since I'm downloading some Microsoft drivers, but I still wanted to test it and this happened. This could be for many reasons. Maybe I didn't download the right drivers or it was incompatible with the game. And it just really varies by a lot. No way. Yo. Why is that actually? Yo, it's working. It's working. It's.
Lurking in the dark is fun and all.
Gonna recreate footage, so I tried uninstalling the app that gave me the Windows drivers, and for some reason, the game actually works on Linux. Like I'm actually playing the game, I'm moving around, I'm able to kill the zombies, and the game actually works. Like I actually wanted it to not work so I could show it on the footage because my initial footage of it got messed up. But it actually works. The game does feel a bit less stable than the Windows versions, but I mean, I can kind of make sense of this because once again, this game is not compatible with Linux. I'm running a I'm running a process on Steam that allows me to run incompatible games. So this kind of makes sense to me. I don't even know. Maybe I download some other Microsoft drivers because I downloaded some similar apps to it, and maybe now it's working. And that other one was maybe they're interfering with each other or something. But I was just shocked when it was actually working. Well, what about Linux compatible apps? How do these perform? Well, on the 8th day, yes, I know it's not technically a week, but this feels like an important part I want in this video. I tested Osu. It wasn't really too hard to download, but still hard to download compared to apps like on Windows. It successfully works though, however it does seem less stable than the Windows version. While working on Linux, I needed to release a video for my YouTube channel. I tried downloading DaVinci Resolve Studio, but I just couldn't get it to work. It was very frustrating trying to solve it, which just led to me giving up. I got as far as downloading it, but when I tried to open it, it didn't open. I ended up just editing the video on Windows. So, what am I gonna do now? Will I make a full switch to Linux? Well, I don't know. I'm currently editing this video on Windows because of the issues downloading DaVinci Resolve Studio on Linux. And I just feel like I can't fully switch to Linux Mint because of the lack of gaming and the stressful coding. I know there's probably a workaround, but it's just very hard to work with Linux, in my opinion. I do know for sure though, I'm going to try and debug Windows though. Thanks for watching this video. Like and subscribe. Let me know your guys' experience on Linux too. Bye.